Hello everyone! My name is Ashley Adams and this is my Microcosm project entitled Life Outside of Parker Pond. When I started reading about the project in week 1, I had to run to Google as I had no idea what a microcosm was. After I found out what it was, I had to find a body of water that I was brave enough to go around because I'm convinced that something is out to get me in green water. After that, I was so excited because it reminded me of when I made my terrarium a couple years ago, minus the water though. I think it is really awesome how this allows you to carry away a piece of a large ecosystem in your back pocket and allows researchers to control however many variables they would like and to add different things and see what can happen because that's how you make change eventually. Good change. My hypothesis is that at the end of the experiment, the water should become even greener in color or possibly brown. The debris at the surface of the water should increase and it should become cloudy. Gas bubbles may be present, and when opened, the water should smell very foul. So let's see. I built my microcosm at a freshwater pond called Parker Pond in Bellwood, Virginia, which is about 25 minutes from where I live. I used a ball 64-ounce wide mouth half-gallon mason jar, and the mouth was not wide enough because there was still water going on my fingers. There is fresh water, algae, dirt, grass, and blue-green algae present in the jar. The height of the jar is 9.5 inches. The width of the jar is 4.5 inches, and the mouth opening is 3 inches in diameter. The volume of the jar, which was calculated using the dimensions given, is 0.002476 meters squared. The project has lasted for 7 weeks. The light conditions the microcosm received was mostly indirect from my windowsill. For about 10 days, not consecutively though, it was very rainy and overcast, so the microcosm did not receive much sun at all. The temperature the microcosm was stored at was anywhere between 68 to 75 degrees. So for my pictures, we can see from the left an aerial view of the pond. Then we can see me now trying to get the water very carefully, trying not to fall in because I was at the very, very edge. And again, the mouth of that jar was not wide enough. Over to the right, that is a picture of exactly where I got my water from. Starting from the left again, that's just another picture of the pond. It's a pretty big pond. In the middle, we have my coordinates, and then we have the altitude. And over to the right, we have another picture of the pond, and here we can see the algae floating on top of the water. So throughout the duration of the project, I observed biofilms and algae growing around the sides of the jar, and it formed a thicker ring on top of the water. Whenever I would move it to take a picture, either outside or on my table, the algae, because it's kind of slimy, it would just jiggle. It wouldn't really move around and anything, it would just jiggle on the water. The quality of the water changed from being translucent with a green hue to completely opaque as it got cloudier due to the decomposition occurring in the ecosystem. The grass that was completely green and healthy when the microcosm was made and at the bottom of the jar has turned yellow in some places when I lift it up and I can really get a good look at it. And that I think is showing that there is nutrient depletion going on in the system. The dirt that was initially compact in the bottom of the jar has become looser, and sometimes clumps of it will float up to the surface when the jar is disturbed. So here we can see the weekly sketches and pictures. So the first 4 I decided to sketch because I really wanted to try to do something. So here we can see in week 1, when I made it and I brought it home and I tried to sketch it, everything wasn't settled as yet because it was rolling around in my passenger seat for a long time until I got home. So that's what it looked like when I brought it home. In week 2, we can see that it got a little bit greener and then everything settled to the bottom. In week 3, we can see that there's some particles there floating in the water, and especially up at the top there's some action going on, and we can see that that ring of debris got a little thicker. We can see in week 4 the ring of debris got quite a bit thicker, and we can see the gas bubbles that I attempted to draw up at the top there started to form. We can see that there's more stuff floating around in the body of it, and those 2 little branches that were moving around in the jar finally hit the bottom. So for week 5 now, when I accepted the truth that I cannot draw and I started to take pictures, we can finally see how good those gas bubbles look. So we know that something is going on in there. In week 6, we can see how that water went from I can kind of see through you a little bit to going completely opaque. You can't see anything through it. And those little cute bubbles that were on the top have now become very thick bubbles up at the top. And we can see the debris starting to stick to the sides of the jar because it got disturbed a bit when I moved it to try to take a picture. And we can see again in week 7, the water is still very, very green. Can't see anything through it. And it still has those thick bubbles up at the top. So for my next set of data here, I have 2 line graphs. The first one that's showing the algae growth, just a visual estimate from week 1 through 7. We can see that it steadily climbed throughout the project. And then the other graph, which shows water clarity, we can see the decrease, which was expected. We can see that take a big zoom, and it's all the way down at the bottom now. It was awful. Could not see anything, which we expected. So for my major findings, during my experiment, I got to see eutrophication take place in the system and how changes in certain factors such as light can slow down the process of the progress of the system. My hypothesis was proven. At the end of the experiment, the water was greener. The debris at the surface of the water increased as particles floated to the top every week. The water became very cloudy and gas bubbles were present at the top of the water, and when open, boy, was it foul. So for my conclusion, 3 course concepts that were evident in this project were that ecological interactions and biodiversity was shown by adding different autotrophs into my system. I was able to see how they all interacted and made the best of the materials that was inside the microcosm. The stability of the ecosystems, even though the conditions changed, whether it was disturbed, temperature, light source, the ecosystem always reestablished itself very quickly. Nutrient cycling and productivity. Finally, my microcosm was taken from a pond that had lots of nutrients present, nitrogen and phosphorus, and it seemed to be a fertilized area and runoff more than likely occurred. High nutrient levels like this can lead to algal bloom or eutrophication. Again, microcosms are just small ecosystems scientists can use to study really complex environmental processes without having to be right at the site. Fieldwork and lab work held hands and marched off into the sunset. And I really, really love that. And I'm so glad I got to learn about this. If I were to do this project again, a hypothesis that I would love to test is that the presence of large worms would double the rate of nutrient depletion. And to improve this project, I would have had two jars instead of one and change up a factor halfway through the project to see how much different the microcosms would be. And these are my references. And thank you so much for listening and have a great one. Bye.